Philip Carruthers is Cyber Domain Strategy Leader for IBM Public Sector. Presidio Federal and IBM sponsor this edition of FedGov Today. Philip, welcome. It's great to talk to you. Thanks for joining me today. What is the intersection that you see of the citizen services that agencies are talking about delivering, and especially with an improved customer experience lineup, and the data security importance, the data security challenges that we're talking about on this program today? Welcome, Philip.
Yeah, thanks, Francis. Thanks for having me today, and thanks for putting this together. When you're working with your utility companies, and when you're working with your banks, and when you're working with all of the different people that you work with daily, and then you sit back and contemplate your relationship with federal agencies, and whether it's with if you're in the military service and your relationship with VA, or you're getting services from Medicare or Medicaid, or whether you're getting services from the post office, and the list goes on, taxes, Census Bureau, certainly your federal loans, and the like, then you consider that they're all one-off relationships right now. They're all in various states of incomplete relationships, building every day to make them better. And there isn't one place that you can go, although login.gov is hypothetically that future place where you can go to start to build and build a relationship with the federal government. And then if you get all that built out, then there's, of course, the citizen services side, but then there's also the back office side. And you have to be concerned about the well-being of your personal data that you're giving to the government. And a lot of people are, a little bit questionable about how much information they're giving to the federal government and whether they really want to do that or not. It should be a trusted relationship. It should be a relationship that you can openly have with the federal government when you're trying to consume their services. It should be a full trusted relationship. And so I just think that that's our future. That's what we'd love to see the government get their wagons hitched around and get that working. And we'd love to see it in a secure and some, now with AI coming on the scene, we'd love to see AI enhanced services around that as well.
We'll talk about AI in a minute, Philip, but you wrote recently, it's time for citizen services by federal agencies to come to life in an integrated, secure, and consistent fashion. What are the steps that you see that agencies need to take to move from wherever they are today to that vision that you outline, that integrated, secure, consistent fashion of delivery of citizen services?
Well, the first thing I'd like to see is them create, sort of a universal services branch that figures out what it should look like and works with the different agencies to create some degree of uniformity around it. And then, as each agency begins to build out their services, they need to obviously do it again in a trusted, automated but secure fashion, and I need to be able to have a secure relationship with them. So obviously, with Zero Trust coming on and being implemented across the government landscape, that has both internal and external implications associated with it. And a lot of the focus right now is just on the basic internal workings of that, and what we need to see that on both the internal and the external services as we move forward.
You mentioned Zero Trust. A lot of agencies are moving towards Zero Trust, but my sense is that most of the focus of that has been internal for federal agency employees. What's the implication of the Zero Trust movement, policy, whatever you want to call it, for the average citizen that will interact with a federal agency, Philip?
Well, I think that the services have to be extended beyond from the agency's internal systems, and then as they look at external systems, they need to be created fundamentally with those same secure capabilities to allow for interaction, whether it's data security, personal data security, as well as identity security being two key pillars of that as we move forward.
You said before we went on the air that artificial intelligence is like 1982 all over again with the personal computer. What do you mean by that? And what is the implication of that? Because everybody, I think, understands how revolutionary the PC was in not just the federal government, but in society as a whole. So what's the connection? What's the analogy that you see there that makes you think that, Philip?
Well, I think we've reached a point where everything's born digital. For the last many decades, it's been a march to creating the digitized versions and launching services. Nowadays, I think when we launch new services, we launch them with the iPhone or with the smartphone in mind as the primary interface device, which is good. But now, from recent times, that we're now putting a layer of artificial intelligence wrapped around that, and we're just at the very beginning of all of the potential of AI, and so we've got literally decades looking forward where AI can be harnessed to improve and enrich those services, but it has to be done in a trusted way. It has to be done securely. It has to be done where we trust the interaction, and where that interaction isn't perhaps going off and doing something that we didn't want it to do or didn't intend it to do.
You wrote recently also, the complexities of this challenge, the challenge you just referred to, is no longer something agencies can organically create. Have they been trying to organically create it or just waiting for it to grow on its own? And if so, how do you see that transition playing out? How does an agency build a strategy to move to that type of deliberate, intentional creation or sustenance of that kind of an infrastructure that works for the citizen, works for the agency moving forward?
I just think of where we've been and where we're going. And where we've been, was implementing computers. They were somewhat well-defined. We had operating systems on top of them. We have applications on top of them. Most of that we generally understand, and it's been what I'll call technology that had confined perimeters. The problem you have with AI, and the challenge we have with AI, is that it represents this somewhat boundless potential. And so runaway freight trains is what comes to mind with that. And we don't really have the guardrails well-defined. There's not a lot of baselines well-defined at this point. Certainly in government, that's all the work that the good work that NIST is doing, and is well on their way to trying to establish those guidelines and baselines, but that there's still a lot of work to be done there. And I think that it's going to be ongoing. I don't think they're going to get to anything anytime soon that says, hey, we've solved the problem and here's the guardrails and this is all we need to worry about. I think it's a spiral, an upward spiral. We see them all the time in the information technology world, the digital world, is that we solve one problem and then we've got a new set of problems and we've got to define the guardrails around that. And then we got to spiral up further. And that's just literally decades looking out as we move forward. The complexity of that is now at a level that I don't think agencies can just hire and expect to staff the people necessary to think that through. I think that is something that they're going to need to reach out to the greater IT community here in certainly in the Beltway region and around the country and around the world, and continue to bring those people in and continue to create programs that fund them and have them doing specific work around securing creating the large language models, and then securing them, and then ensuring that all that technology is doing all the things that we want it to do.
one of the methodologies that agencies are using to try to, I think, provide a little bit at least of governance or guardrails or whatever you might want to call it around AI and automation tools is positioning them as digital twins or assistants or that kind of thing. Is that at least a starting point in your view that makes sense for the way that you help not just the agencies as an enterprise, but the individuals within the agencies who are using these tools or potentially affected by these tools to kind of wrap their arms around what's coming?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've just got to go, cautiously and in some baby steps to get some successes and prove that we can do this in a trusted way, in a way that makes both sides of both the citizens and the government comfortable that things are going well, and then build upon it. We still need basic definition to get established, and hopefully that's forthcoming. But then I think that we can start to implement, helpful bots that can help us navigate our way through, and that obviously has the reduction of human capital associated with it that we're going to need in order to employ it. But I do think that certainly is a good starting point.
Philip, it's great to have you on the program. Thanks very much for your time today.
Terrific. Thank you, Francis.
You can read more in today's show notes at fedgovtoday.com.